Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason and you're watching Jason Jensen Trains. I am so excited about today's video. We will be combining the three structures that we have made in the last 3 episodes on the channel. I will put up images of those 3 structures on the screen now. For those of you just joining us on this project, I have teamed up with Jeff Grove, the owner of Carolina Craftsman Kits. Together, we designed 3 structures. You can purchase them individually or all 3 at once to build the large paper mill. And today I'm going to show you how to combine all 3 kits, and then we'll also be building a diorama base that the structure fits on. All right, we have a lot to do, so let's head over to the workbench and get started on it. To combine all of the structures, I am replacing the signs so that they all read the same. So the first thing I'm doing is taking a sponge and using burnt umber and sponging on rust. The next thing, we'll take rust colored chalk and we'll just put some streaks on these signs. Now you can do as little as or as much as you want to. If your layout is more modern and it's new, you won't want to rust the signs. Okay, and that's it. So take your time when cutting the signs out, and I have a brand new sharp blade that I put in. I always cut my signs with a brand new blade. That way it doesn't tear the paper. If you use an old blade, it won't be as smooth a cut, and like I said, it could tear the paper. I don't cover up the sign when I cut it. I line up the ruler right on the edge of the sign and then cut. This way you can see exactly where you're cutting. Where I think if you cover up your sign, you don't know exactly where you're cutting, and then if you pull away your ruler, you might have some white of the paper showing on the sign. This way you know exactly, you can see what's being cut. Hopefully that makes sense. That's just the way I've always done it. These little ones, I'm just going to freehand it, not ruler. Okay, we might not use all of these, but just getting them all cut. That way I don't have to stop what I'm doing and cut more. Okay, real quick, I'm just going to use a marker. I should probably get a dark brown marker. That would work the best, but you definitely want to paint or use a marker on the edge of the paper so it doesn't look like a paper sign. You want to go very lightly, and I'm leaning it towards the back side of it, if that makes sense. So you can see here, like I'm doing it like this, where if you do it the other way, you risk getting your color on the front of the sign.
You don't want to press too hard because it's paper and it'll soak up and bleed into the paper. So you can even practice just on a white piece just to sort of get the hang of it first. So I'm going to take yellow ochre and a sponge, get most of the paint off. Now I'm going to go over some of the black and red areas to make it look like it's chipping off and the yellow of the sign is coming through. And it really has a nice effect. Hopefully you're able to see that and get the detail of it. Okay, so I've got the signs put on here. And you can always add some more rust with pastels once it's on too. Now we'll put the signs on this. So just smear a little bit on the back and then take my finger over it once to even it out. This does get a little tricky. Okay, there's that one. This one's a little hard by this staircase. Be careful not to lay your sign in wet glue. I've done that before and ruined my signs. You should probably have a piece of paper laid down when you do this. But I'll wash my mat and scrub it good with a sponge after this project is all done. Now we do have these little signs, and if you want to just put some here and there, and depending on where it sits, there's always the back side too, where you can add little signs or put them on the side of delivery trucks. So the next step will be to join these two. Now you'll notice there was a set of stairs that came down right here, and I removed those. So that gets put on there like that. Now I set it exactly where I wanted it to go, and then took a pencil and marked up on the white trim underneath the roof, under the overhang. I just marked it at an angle. So next, we'll cut this very carefully. I'll show you up close exactly what I'm doing. So I'm cutting the corner off of the roof, and then I also cut diagonal. So we want to cut that trim off and a little bit of the roof. Now if you order all 3 kits at once, you'll be able to avoid all this. Okay, so we have our trim off the front. So now you can see that fits in there. Now what we need to do is do the same. We need to cut the roof off right here, and we need to figure out where to cut it up here, this direction. Okay, so we'll mark, I hope you can see this. We'll mark this oh, and go ahead and remove your windows. Okay, so hopefully you can see that, but it fits tight up against it. Okay, so far this is what it looks like. Now we'll put on the other structure. Now I have not glued these yet. We'll wait and glue everything together once we have our diorama made. This one's going to be a lot easier. The only thing we have to do is make this side flush with the wall, cut a little bit of the overhang off, and then on this one we just have to cut the overhang off right here and that trim. So that'll be the first thing that we do. You want to use a sharp brand new blade when doing this to get nice clean cuts. Okay, so as you can see, it fits up against, you might not be able to see it. I'll try to show you. It fits right up against it flat. Now we'll cut the overhang off of the backside. I didn't leave much knowing that I would be cutting it off. Okay, now these two should, yep. All right, perfect. So I placed it on my mat to get an idea of the measurement of how big I want to make my base. And I've decided I'm going to make it 18 inches long and then 10 inches deep. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my styrofoam all cut, and I told you wrong. I actually made this 11 by 18. So it's 11 inches deep and 18 inches long. Now we'll place our buildings back on here and draw where we want our concrete to go and our track. Okay, so I took some time and positioned it exactly where I want it. Now I'm going to start to draw where I want the concrete to go. And just to add some interest, I don't want this whole thing to sit on a solid piece of concrete. I'm doing kind of chunks of concrete to almost make it appear that maybe this wasn't all built at one time. And I will definitely have the concrete pad that's in the center look different than the rest of the concrete. And the road that goes over here up to that little door, I think I'll make that gravel in there. Then we'll have a sidewalk right here in the front. And there's a ramp over here on the side, and we'll connect that sidewalk to the ramp. And then maybe we'll put a sidewalk right in front of this set of stairs. Okay, then we've got room over on this side, piece of track. So we'll get a piece of track cut to length, and we'll paint it and weather it and put that there. Now the reason I'm keeping it pretty tight on the sides and really not going too large with this is that this diorama will be going to different shows this year with Jeff Grove, the owner of Carolina Craftsman Kits. He'll be taking this to different shows so that people will be able to see it, and then you'll be able to purchase either the three separate kits or all of it together. But in order for him to take it places, I just don't want it to be too big to take up too much room, because he has other dioramas that he'll be traveling with. Okay, next we are using joint compound. And I'm just using a piece of wood. And I'm putting it on pretty thin. You don't have to go thick. Okay, next, for the concrete in the center, we're going to use this. This comes in black and gray. I don't have gray, all I have is black. I'm probably going to do some painting over the top of it after it dries of gray. And we're just going to apply it the same way. It has a gritty rock texture to it, which is what makes it look like concrete. It's probably hard to tell on camera, but I'm going really thin with it. Okay, now we'll take the tape off before this starts to set up. So I let that dry for a few hours and then lightly went over it with some sandpaper, and I used 220 grit. And like I said, just go lightly over it just to get rid of any little raised areas or jagged or sharp edges. And then I definitely went over the front edge of it really nice. And next we'll start to paint it. Okay, so to make our concrete color, I'm using chalk paint. I bought this at Michael's. Okay, and I'm even going to, let's mix in a little bit of neutral gray. And as you can see, I didn't mix it. It's probably hard to tell on camera, but I didn't mix it all together. It's kind of swirled colors in there. And it gives it kind of an uneven look. Now it's okay if we get it onto the pink. That's fine, because we're going to be painting this all brown and putting dirt and grass and stuff on it. Now if you wanted to leave the center black to make it look just like blacktop, you could leave it. I'm going to get my brush wet. I'm going to go over this. The reason I got it wet is to thin the paint a little bit so that this looks like it's a different shade. This will end up looking a little darker. Keep my brush wet again. Notice I'm going in one direction. Now to give that a little bit more time to dry, let's mark where our dirt and grass is going to go. So we want the dirt to go underneath the deck because you can see under it. then same on the front. This deck, you can see through those slats underneath it. And then you can see underneath here too. So we want dirt all underneath the deck. Okay, so there's no need really to put dirt underneath the whole entire structure. So we're just going to kind of mark out where that sits. So we can see underneath this deck. So we need to make sure that we have dirt all underneath that deck. So I cut a piece of track to length. I then painted all of it with raw umber. And let that dry completely. Then I took light taupe and dry brushed over all of it. Then for the sides of the rail, I painted it with burnt sienna. I then made a wash with the burnt sienna and just went on the outside of the rail and did the wash over the ties just on the outside. Now you can take other colors. You could take like Mississippi mud, some other shades of brown, maybe burnt umber, and paint some individual ties. Just for this display, I'm not going to do that. But next, what I am going to do is put a wash of black over this. So you can see a lot of water and just a little bit of black. It looks really dark at first, but it won't be when it dries. And we can soak up some of the black on the outside. Okay, we'll let that sit and dry, and then we're ready to glue this onto our diorama. Okay, my track is all dried. Now I'm just going to simply take an eraser and just clean the top of the rails. Gets any extra paint. We're not going to be running trains on this, but we still want it to look nice and shiny right on the top of the rails. Okay, that is done. Boy, that black wash really brings out the details and wood grain. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, now we're going to lay down our track. And I'm going to get a piece of paper to put under this. Now I'm going to use Eileen's tacky glue. Now I'm using fine ballast. Now we're going to take raw umber. Okay, now we're simply going to paint where the dirt goes. As you can see, I'm going pretty thick. Now I'm using real dirt. Okay, so I let that dry for just a little bit. And now we're going to brush off all the extra. Okay, so we've got all of our extra dirt off. And now we can start to put down grass, and I'm even going to put some more dirt in over here. Since this track would not be a mainline track, there would be lots of dirt and weeds growing in between the ties. So I'm just going to take my dirt. First, I'm going to lay down my paper again. I will glue this all down after we get it all looking the way we want it to. Okay, so I have alcohol in this that I'm going to spray on here. And what that does is it breaks down the surface tension. Now I can go in with my 50-50, half water, half glue. Just soaking up some of that extra glue. Now I'm just going in with some green. I'm not going to do much on this diorama because it's going to be going to quite a few different shows, and so I don't want to risk having stuff falling off of it. Now I'm going to use some fine turf burnt grass going right along the edge of the cement. So as we're waiting for this to all dry, I'm going to start to put in some of my lines. I'm using a sharp number 2 pencil. Just want to be careful not to disturb your wet grass and dirt. Now I'm going to go sharpen my pencil again because it's starting to get a little bit rounded and my lines are getting kind of thick. So I'll go sharpen it again, and then we'll add some lines in the center, and then I'll probably have to sharpen it again after that, and then we can add cracks. Okay, so I've got all of my lines drawn. Now I'm going to go sharpen my pencil again, and we'll draw cracks in the individual squares. Now with our very sharp pencil, we can draw cracks. Okay, let's glue some little weeds and pieces of grass in those cracks that we just made. Okay, we'll take our tweezers and put little pieces on there. Now I'm just pressing all that we put on there into the glue. Let's get some pastel chalks and start adding some dirt to this. Now we're going to want to put our building on there to see exactly where we need tire mark. Okay, so as you can see, I've taken the buildings off, and before we glue our buildings on, we're going to paint the edge of this black. Okay, so the edge is completely painted black all the way around. Now we can start to glue on our structures. Okay, everything's glued in place. I had some weights on it while it was drying. The one thing I'm going to do is add some tire marks over here on the side. So I just added some oil drips. So I just used black acrylic paint and added a bunch of water. First did some really light washes, just little puddles, and then let that dry, then go back in with a little bit more paint to darken it up. So I think that it is complete.
I hope you enjoyed today's video. Many of you have asked me if this will be going onto my layout. And the answer is no, it will not be. And the reason is, it will be traveling to some train shows this year with Carolina Craftsman Kits. The first show is the end of this month in Springfield. And let me check the dates for you. It's the 25th and the 26th of January 2020. And there will be many more shows after that. I just don't have dates right now. But if you're attending those shows, you can meet Jeff Grove, the owner of Carolina Craftsman Kits, and you'll be able to see the diorama that we just built. Okay, so let me give you a close-up look at the model. And again, this is HO scale. Everything that you see on this comes in the kit. The only thing that does not is the base and the piece of track right here. But everything else is included. I'd like to talk to you really quick about what goes into creating a Craftsman kit. So you will do concept drawings, and you may do many concept drawings, and then you come up with your final drawing, and after that point you are on the computer and you are designing the actual structure. You then have to disassemble it in the computer and draw each wall section, and it all has to be to scale. There's hours and hours spent on the computer designing it. Then you have to build your prototype, and you're using pieces that you cut on the laser or even hand cut, trying to build the prototype. And as you're building it, you're photographing it for the instructions and possibly even doing a rough draft of your instructions. So after your prototype is finished, you take really good pictures of it, and this takes a while to set up lighting and just to get the perfect pictures for ads, YouTube, Instagram, instructions, the label on the box. You're just doing lots of photos. Okay, then you go into production on the kit, and you order enough wood in a large quantity to fulfill orders. And at this point you're kind of guessing, so you're ordering lots of wood, doors, windows, detail castings, and then you actually have to start cutting all of your pieces on a laser cutter. Now, a laser cutter is not like a photocopier. You don't put in 100 sheets of wood and type in 100 and push go, and it doesn't just spit them out. You have to lift the lid on a laser cutter, put in a single sheet, it cuts your wall sections, lift the lid, take it out, put in the next sheet, close your lid. It's very time consuming. It takes a long time to cut all of the parts, even for just a single kit. Then you have to order boxes in a large quantity that you think that all of the parts will fit into. Then you're printing all of your instructions, and you have paper cost, printing cost. You're printing labels for the outside of the box that are full color, that has a nice picture on it. Maybe you're printing sheets that are just signs that go on the structure. I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out. There is just so much work and so many hours involved in creating a single kit. It is really just incredible. And so it doesn't just end there. You then have to put the product on your website, and you're advertising it on social media, and then you're fulfilling orders. This project alone, we have 2 months in this project, and we worked around the clock. We really worked extremely fast on it. So I just wanted to let some of you know the hours and dedication that go into creating a structure kit. But anyone who is producing Craftsman kits has a true passion for this hobby. I know that Jeff and I are thrilled to offer this kit to you. Well, I hope that this has inspired you to at least try building a wood craftsman kit. They are just so much fun to put together. Well, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy modeling, everyone.